Hello and welcome to the Men's Lifeline Academy, where we help promote men to live their best lives possible, to be a scholar of life, to know yourself, and to go on this journey not alone. And today we got Craig, and Craig's going to get a special shout because this is number 50, number 50 in the
Yes.
podcast. 2 years in the making to make this happen. So if you've been with this channel for some time, this is a big celebration because I remember 2 years ago we were on one, two, three, four, five, and Craig gets to be the big 50. So Craig is going to tell us his story and how he healed from divorce and how he's going to be soon a father of two. And better yet, he's also helping men to transform their lives with clarity and purpose. Needless to say, Craig, welcome to the podcast, bro.
Thanks for having me, Zach. I really feel honored that I'm the 50th guest here. I mean, 2 years in the making. I feel like that's a lot of pressure I have to live up to make sure this is memorable. But
Well,
thanks for having me.
the best thing about this podcast, two bros coming together, talking about life, talking about manhood, both in the femininity and masculinity, being true to who you are, and just telling your story to help inspire and to impact one person at a time, one life at a time, as we like to say.
Hey, that's what I'm good at, sharing my story. I love helping out men going through the same thing that I struggled with previously. I like paying it forward.
And that's what's so incredible. And when we got to meet behind the scenes, and when we did our meet and greet call, that's what I love. I love meeting someone, hearing their stories, especially when I'm bringing them someone on the podcast. So, Craig, why don't you just tell us your story about your struggles and your triumphs? Because that's what we're about here. We're about honesty, authenticity, genuine, and helping someone in need.
So yeah, my story goes back quite a ways. I met my now ex-wife in 2003. We dated till 2006, and we got married in 2007. We weren't we wanted kids, but we weren't trying when we found out that my ex-wife was pregnant.
Hmm.
So we were, pretty excited and taken aback by that, but super happy, of course. So about a year and a half. Let's see, we got married in 2007. My daughter was born in 2008 in March. Her birthday's actually just in a couple weeks. She'll be 17. So that gives you an idea how long
Oh.
it's been. But my wife and I, or my ex-wife and I, separated near the end of 2009. So we were only married
Oh.
for maybe about two and a half, yeah, I guess about 2.5 years or so. And at that time, my daughter was a year and a half old, and it was a shock to me that the marriage was ending. Didn't really have any idea that it was coming. I mean, I was
Oh.
completely blindsided.
I was just
And
thinking that. Wow.
yeah, and I mean, it really, I mean, for anybody who has ever had their heart broken, like how bad it is, but marriage is on a much, I guess, deeper level, just because I think the bond in a marriage is usually stronger than it is, if it's just boyfriend, girlfriend. So after that happened, I mean, I was pretty much starting from rock bottom. Um, I had to figure out how to do the single dad stuff, how to co-parent, and also, try and negotiate with my ex who, I mean, I was heartbroken. So having to face her regularly, just to shift custody with our daughter, just made it more difficult. It was almost like I couldn't get any room to breathe to heal
Oh.
because every time I saw her, it was like just reopening the wound, like, peeling the top layer off a scab. So I think 2010 was probably the worst year of my life, just because that was maybe 3 months after my ex-wife and I separated, and I don't really remember much about the year. I was just sort of going through the motions and in like a fog, basically. I ended up putting on like 50 pounds. Just I pretty much locked myself in the house. Hardly ever went anywhere unless I had my daughter with me, which is only about half the time. And then near the end of 2010, I started to sort of pull out of it. I got a new job, and that just sort of like set me in good momentum. Like, okay, good things can still happen in life, because I was, trapped in a place where, my marriage is ending, my family's over, everything sucks. It's not going to get any better. But then
Hmm.
getting that new job just sort of shifted my mindset there. And 2011 was when I really sort of put myself on the path to thinking about, whatever has happened between my ex-wife and I, it's not as important as the father I am going forward with my daughter. Like, I knew that I was going to be okay from everything, but with her being so young, I had to make sure that it wasn't something that she suffered, the downfall from. Like, even later on in life, like, I know a lot of people or a lot of adults talk about how their, parents divorced when they were younger and it really messed them up. So
Right.
my biggest concern was just making sure that she made it through. And another thing I noticed too at the time, because social media wasn't big, was that there wasn't really any help for men going through divorce. Like there's plenty of groups for women and, women helping each other out, but I don't know if it's just because men typically try and solve our own problems. There was really nobody else for me to reach out to. And I was the first friend in my group going through it. So
Oh,
I mean, you try and talk to my friends, and of course they were there for me. They were great, but it's always easier, at least from my perspective, when you have somebody that can relate to what you're going through because they know. And I mean, it's
mhm.
also beneficial for you to see somebody that's gone through it and made it out successfully. So around about 2013, 2014, I started a blog and didn't stick with it, but the main goal was to try and figure out how to reach other men to help them going through it. I figured if there wasn't a community, maybe I could just tell my story and it'll, somehow wind up in front of the right people that need it.
Right.
So I did a lot of trial and error with that over the years until starting to take it more seriously in 2019. I started an Instagram page, um, and I also started a podcast in 2020. I only made it up to 30 episodes, but I haven't done it in the last couple of years. But yeah, I was just trying to pretty much reach, men going through divorce any way I possibly could. So I tried to, put myself out there as much as possible. So I was, on Facebook, on Instagram, doing the podcast. Pretty much anybody that would listen or that I came across that needed help, I was trying to help. And that's, pretty much what I'm trying to do today. The same thing, just, help men that I know are struggling, just by showing them what I did, showing them that things can get better. You can still have everything you want. So I know I don't know anybody that's gone through a divorce and didn't suffer some kind of after effects from it.
Yeah, I wouldn't say you're really human or a man if you don't have some pain that comes forward. I mean, like you said, especially every time you have to see your ex when you're handing the kid off, as you described, it was like reopening a wound that could never take time to heal and take your time. So, how did you eventually? Well, I mean, I'm sure you're still struggling with it to this day, but how did you eventually like heal from that? Because I know you really talk about going from divorce to healing. So, what was that healing journey? What did that look like?
So I know for me, early on, it was a lot of like pointing fingers and playing victim. Like, oh my God, my ex-wife did this to me. I can't believe she did that. I was great. I was all this. But after a while, I just started looking back at like all the relationships I've had, even people I've dated and why they didn't work out. And I don't know how or why, but it just struck me. There's one common theme with all my relationships, and it's me. And then it struck me, well, relationships take two people, so I can't just
Mhm.
blame her. Obviously, I had to play a role too. And I think once I had that realization, it became more about me trying to fix the things that I needed to work on for myself that I struggled with. And, some of those things were like, just getting my act together with fitness, being more present for my daughter, trying to figure out how I showed up in relationships and how I could do better, how I, wasn't the husband that I should have been, and how I wasn't, really fully present for the marriage either. And I think once I made that shift and was able to take control, or at least take responsibility, it helped me sort of control, like, okay, I can't fix what they did, but I can
Mhm.
fix what I did. So that was like the biggest catalyst for me to turn everything around. And I think, I mean, for the most part, like my ex-wife and I get along, well now. I wouldn't say we're, best friends. I don't think we'll go out and grab a drink or anything, but we've been able to co-parent successfully and we get along and I'm still close with her family. So there's a lot of, inter-family mingling at, functions and things like that. So it can be done. It just takes time. It's different for everybody.
And then, as you said, I know, and as you progressed in years, how did you did you find like any group to be a part of? Because I know back, like let's say, and from what I can recall on the radio, there really wasn't really even divorce lawyers for men. I know you hear a little bit more about that now on the radio, where I hear a little bit more support for men in that category. But are you finding more support group for men now, especially as you're trying to get more in that kind of space and that niche?
And well, for me, when I was going through it, there's a site called meetup.com, and it's pretty much just like a local sort of event finder type of
Mhm.
platform. So every kind of hobby or interest you have, there's probably a group of people in your area that are meeting up to do that thing. It's just the
Right.
easier way to try and make it happen. So I was able to find a single parent group in my area. So I started spending time with them as soon as I could. And it was good because we did stuff as adults separately, but we also brought our kids too.
Oh,
So it was
cool.
just good to be around other people that had gone through, the things that I was going through. And some of us, were in the same stages. Others of us were, really further past it. So that was a huge help. I also tried a church support group, and that was okay for a couple weeks, but it started to get kind of toxic. I noticed that every week, people were more concerned about getting their stories out and how
Mm,
tough and how heartbroken it is, which I understand, of course, but I just kind of felt like for a group setting, it was kind of hard to make everything fit for that. I felt like that should have been something that was more done one-on-one with like a therapist or something like that.
okay, sure.
So after a couple weeks, I was like, I can't. It actually hurt more to go. So I just stopped. I stopped going because I mean, I'd be like, oh, I feel awful, but then somebody would come in and tell a terrible story, and then you start feeling bad for them too, and then everybody just sort of bleeds their emotions onto each other, and it just sort of makes it worse.
Yeah, it could be a little bit more of that flooding of emotions where
Yeah,
you hear everyone's emotions and hopefully everyone wasn't trying to, just share their stories. I know a lot of times it's like, wow, that's bad, but what about this? And kind of
yeah,
bad one up type of thing that can
yeah,
naturally happen. Not that it's intentional or conscious. There's just sometimes like, well, it's just horrible all around it. When you're around a lot of that, where it doesn't feel like there's hope. Everyone's in pain and suffering and going through that hardship. So you're looking for probably more like guidance and help on how to handle it. Was that like an idea of what you're working through, or what were you hoping to get from the group?
yeah. So I mean, the main reason I just wanted to meet other people that were either going through it or had gone through it. I've always sort of had the idea that if I see somebody else being successful at something, there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to do it too. I mean, if you just,
Okay.
level the playing field. So if I saw people doing well and thriving after it, then I should be able to do it too. So I wanted to soak up the knowledge I could from them, um, find out about how the divorce process actually works,
Okay.
find out about lawyers and things like that. So that was super beneficial for me at that time. But I noticed nowadays there's a lot more groups for men just in general and men supporting each other and people trying to grow each other's masculinity and build stronger marriages. So it's great to see. And I'm of the mind that, the more the merrier. Like I know a lot of men need help. So, wherever you can find it, as long as it's not, toxic, crazy help, then yeah, absolutely. More people, the better.
And those groups get started mostly, from my experience, is because kind of like you, they didn't really find any group. So if there's no group, well, I might as well create my own and see who I can attract. And especially when you put that message out to the world, and someone's like, "Yeah, I was struggling," almost like the. Are you familiar with Robert Glover?
Oh yeah, I love his book. No More Mr. Nice
Numerous
Guy
nice guy.
changed my life. Yeah,
Well, he was like that, and he developed a whole support group about recovering nice guys who are kind of meek and don't really express themselves, don't really let out, don't really pay attention. And he really, I mean, he's had 3 divorces, so he's had
yeah,
lots of experience of what it's like to be a nice guy, and he learned a lot.
yeah. That was one of the first books I've read where I actually felt like it was perfectly describing my personality and how I was. And
Mm,
I was only maybe a few pages in, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I understand all of this. Like I do this. I shouldn't do this. I should be doing this. And it was like every page, it was just yeah. The whole thing just flipped my concept of being human upside down, or at least being a masculine male, and getting your needs and wants taken care of, and having to speak up about it, and not expecting people to be able to read your mind, and it just yeah, it changed a lot for me.
yeah, especially when a lot of men die in desperate or quiet desperation. I know Nate Norman's big on saying that, and
Yeah.
Todd, and things like that. And so now, do you still like need a support group? Like, are you still like looking for that, or have you
No, I'm pretty much at this point. I've
finished?
moved on. I mean, it's been so long. I've done so
Okay,
much work. I've actually gotten to a place now where I'm remarried. I've been married for almost 4 years. So, I mean, I'd say it's pretty much been a 180 from where it was before. I mean, yeah, there's still things that pop up from time to time because I don't think you ever fully, completely get over things,
mhm,
but nothing is anywhere near as triggering as it was before. I'm a lot better equipped to just sort of grin and bear things that might be tough. When you've been married to somebody, they know how to push your buttons, and sometimes my ex will do that, but usually not too much anymore. We get
okay.
along pretty well.
Well, it seems like you've been able to co-parent for a while. So what have you done differently from your prior marriage to the marriage now that's thriving with 4 years? Because that's a long time. Because you were like married for like 2 years, if I remember correctly. Now we're
Yeah.
going to double that to 4 years. So what have you done differently since you kind of decided to take on that role of not pointing the fingers all the time and kind of look as what did everyone kind of contribute to? So what have you done kind of differently?
Well, so in the first marriage and even my other relationships before that, I was just a terrible communicator.
Okay.
I didn't talk about much. I was still sort of stuck in the mind state that men don't really share their feelings, and if you do,
Mm,
women are going to view you as weak. I know that was part of the reason why my ex-wife and I, fell out of favor. Um, so communication has been number one since my wife and I got together. Like we told each other up front that we were just going to be brutally honest about everything.
oh,
We weren't going to hold back. And the point is not to be rude or to be mean, but just
right.
to get to the place where you feel comfortable talking to each other about anything. Because I feel like for your marriage to be successful, you have to have that kind of comfort. So we've pretty much been on that from day one. Trying to think of some of the other things that were bad about the other marriage. We do a lot more. I know in my first marriage, after having the kid, and a lot of new parents go through this as well. You just sort of get trapped into doing everything for the child and not
Mhm,
really focusing so much on your marriage.
mm.
And one of the things I learned was that even though you have a child, like your marriage still needs to be a priority because the kid's better off if they have both of you there together than if they only have one of you. So that was one of the things that I worked on as well. Um, trying to have more fun with each other, trying to have like adventure, even if it's just something small. Like we'll make a game out of going to the grocery store, or we'll try something new every month or once every couple of weeks. Because I just noticed from my perspective, like I'm in a much better mood when I'm having fun, and I know the
Mhm.
same is true for my wife. So it actually helps us bond better if we're both just having a good time and trying new things because that's what we like to do.
So, and being brutally honest, how do you set that up? Like, if you have to have like a serious conversation, like, do you have like talks like once a day? Do you do audits like once a week, once a month? Like, how does that look like?
I mean, we don't set aside specific time for that,
Mhm.
but when we're together with each other, we just go in. And usually one of us will say something along the lines of, I'm not trying to be a jerk when I say this, or this might sound messed up, but I'm just going to tell you how I feel. And then at that point, I'm like, okay, I get it. She's just talking about how she feels. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's true, but she's just looking to vent and share. So we usually will do that. That keeps the peace. There have been a couple times where we've gotten, I don't want to say heated, but it's got a little tense and we've just sort of, taken a break. Hey, let's take 10, 15 and come back. And that's worked really well. But the brutal honesty it's been great because I don't think I've ever had that in a relationship before. So just being able to share everything with her and not worry about being judged or criticized or, be made to look like a villain. It's huge.
Yeah, and I think that's important too to be like, because sometimes people are terrible at explaining things. Explain things. Like I always say, good intentions, maybe a little bit poor in the execution part.
Yeah.
So sometimes we can kind of like diffuse a little bit by saying, "Listen, this is not going to come out great, but here's what I'm thinking." Then you can kind of finally get that out, and then typically you can kind of process what's going on from there. So it's really good. Now I'm really curious. How do you make grocery shopping fun? Like,
So one of the things we
do
do,
you do like Era One and just like do a Kobe or something? Like, what do you?
no,
No?
we just sort of make it like a social experiment. We'll try and I don't know if we see a funny looking couple, maybe it's not polite, but we'll just kind of joke at each other like, hey, that guy's wearing a crazy hat or a crazy shirt. Or we'll try and figure out people's backgrounds, like, oh, what do you think that couple's like? And then we'll just make up some crazy
Ah,
backstory.
some people watching. I see.
Yeah, that's usually how it's done. Or we'll be, I don't know, like we might be a little bit flirty as well, steal a
Ooh.
kiss or something like that. Nothing too graphic, obviously, because it's a family place, but just little things like that to keep it interesting.
It's okay. Well, that's what happens to a lot of marriages. You gotta keep it a little spicy. You gotta keep it a little bit
Exactly.
romantic.
Exactly.
Gotta have some fun with it. When marriages kind of get dry and when there's no spice, there's no light to it.
Yeah, that's the truth. It is. I lived it. I know.
Yeah. So what kind of led you now that you've kind of healed through all the divorce and everything that you went through and now happily married from everything it sounds like, to now wanting to help other men go through like divorce, what it's like to coach them and mentor them? Like, what's that journey been like?
It's been I- it's it's been amazing actually. Like
Oh,
it's because I've always wanted to do it. Since going through the divorce, just actually helping people and have them be like, "Oh man, that helped me so much." Like, thank you. That's just what I want to do. It fills me up. It actually, I'd say it kind of feels like my purpose at this point, just paying it forward. Like I just want to help
mhm.
as many men as possible. But it's just it's so easy to get caught up on your own story, but then you realize meeting other people, everybody has their own story and everybody's going through something. So it's good to be able to help out where I can.
Awesome. Do you have a business, or do you just kind of keep doing things kind of on the side, or?
Yeah, so I work a regular 9 to 5 now. Take on clients when I can get them in my off time. Eventually, of course, like anybody, I'd like to replace my job with this, but we're working towards that. It's a process.
No, that's part of the journey of life is like finding out where that spark is that you won't just want to have a, job, just of a broke, as well. They like to say is like you want to have a career. And
Yeah,
that's a different mindset. It's like you can have a 9 to 5 while building your side, especially if that's where you want your career to go. Especially when you can be financially responsible, when you have enough where you can pay the bills. And I've heard different things. I've heard, once you can double, triple your income, that's when you can kind of really consider leaving a job.
yeah, I'm a ways away from that, but yeah, that's the dream.
Well, like anything, it's a process. How much time you nurture,
Yeah,
because it's your baby, right? This is your baby. You gotta nurture the baby. It takes years for it to grow.
yeah, exactly.
So
I know. I mean, and even if it doesn't work out, I'm good with just knowing that I helped some men. Like that's good enough for me. Like even just reaching one and
yeah,
providing, a guiding light or, helping them through something, that's good enough for me.
yeah. So are you gonna continue the podcast?
Um, I go back and forth on it. It's one of those things where it's like I want to do it, but it's just harder and harder to find time now.
Okay.
I know that's sort of like a lame excuse, like, oh, you're just not prioritizing. You have plenty of time, but it's like in the past for me, if I've tried to focus on too many things, then I end up getting discouraged because nothing really takes off because I'm not devoting, my full time to it. So right now I'm just focusing on getting the word out and growing on, like X, Twitter.
Okay.
Once I get better with that, maybe I'll add in the podcasting, but I haven't decided yet.
Hey, as someone who works both a 9 to 5 and a little bit beyond that, and builds something on the side, it takes a lot of time. It's
Yeah, it's not easy.
So if you're not really well at multitasking, man, we gotta take off that shame off you, man. Take that judgment off you. You just gotta be like, that's some wisdom right there, knowing not to take on too many things. Because too many people do too many things at one time, then they get burnt out, and then they're like, screw it.
Yep, that's what happened to me. So that was a valuable lesson I learned. It's like, let me get one thing locked down and then add something small on top of it. And that's how we'll build the momentum for it. But I don't need to do everything all at once.
Yeah, we can still. So when you did the podcast, did you put it on YouTube at all?
No, so it's all on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Okay.
And I'll talk a little bit about it. So I did do interviews because actually I avoided social media for the longest time. Like I hated it. I was like, this is stupid. I had a Facebook page, but then I quit it after the separation because, I was racked with, shame from the divorce. So when I finally did get on Instagram and I started meeting other single dads and dads, I was like, this isn't so bad. These people are pretty cool. And I've actually gone on to meet some of them in real life, which was mind blowing to me. Everybody I've met has just been super gracious and awesome. But yeah, I would try and get other single dads to share their stories, like how they became, a co-parent or a single dad, and how they always try to keep it positive. Like we're not coming on to throw knives at your ex. We want to talk about how it hit you and how you got past it. Would you did to get better? And some people just have some really interesting stories that I think more people need to hear. So it was just good to get those out.
Yeah, we'll definitely include in the description below, because that way, if it's going to help a lot of single dads, because I brought on a few single dads, so if that's going to help their stories and help you, whether you do it or not. I mean, you recorded 30 episodes, and before the show is happening, you're just saying it's like most people don't get past 20, and you're just like, yeah, I've done 30. I'm like, you just like prove
Yeah.
that you can do this, and you were beating that number for a minute. And if you need to take like a little bit of a backspin just to get things organized and categorized, nothing wrong with that. So, but we'll still include it in here. So make sure you send me that link. Well, what was the kind of your channel called, your like podcast called, if you remember?
So I'm like my handle on every social media platform is Single Dad Reboot. It's all
Okay,
one word. So my podcast was the Single Dad Reboot podcast. So
solid name.
Single Dad Reboot, you can find me on anything that I'm on.
All right, well, we'll find you up and we'll put you in there. We'll get you promoted and supported because on this channel, we always love to support people.
I appreciate that. As many people as can get the word to would just be great. Just want to help folks.
Yeah, how'd you go about the name Single Dad Reboot? Because that's like a fantastic name that really describes it. Like, okay, Single Dad. Now, you thought you saw episode 1, but here we go, episode 2. But this isn't just like a TV show where it's the same thing. This is new. It's exciting.
Yeah. So originally I was going to make it the Single Dad Project,
Oh,
but when I went to look at websites, somebody had a blog with that name.
oh,
So I was like, I can't do Single Dad Project because if this does take off and his takes off, then people are going to get us confused.
yeah,
So I had to brainstorm for a couple days on what I could change project to. Like I knew I wanted Single Dad to be in there,
right.
and I don't know how or why. I was talking to a coworker, and I asked them. I was like, "Hey, what do you think of this?" And I said Single Dad Project, and they were like, "Nah, it doesn't have enough like pizzazz. Like it just sounds kind of plain."
Yeah,
So when I was going through, and I was like, "Reboot." I was like, "How about Single Dad Reboot?" And they were like, "Yeah, that's what it should be. That's perfect." And
I like it.
it it fit to me because I always make an analogy to computers. Like, so you have like your base software, which is fine, but there's always updates and upgrades coming along. So you don't have to buy a new computer or change your whole life. You just need to reset and add the new software on top. So that was always the analogy that I use for it.
Man, that's spicy. I like it. I like it. Plus, it's a little bit different, right? Because when I hear Single Dad Project, I'm not gonna lie, the first thing I think of it comes like, oh, it's something from the government.
Yeah, that's
Right?
another good
Like
point
all those
too.
projects that try to help support, which they're much needed, and I'm not dismissing anything like that. It
Yeah,
just doesn't sound like it's like a personal growth, like more, right? Kind of, I agree with the guy. It's just kind of like, pretty
yeah.
standard.
Project can mean a lot of different things. You know, it's like, are you really suffering from your divorce? Like, what is your project? What is it you're working on? Are you working on yourself? Are you working on something else?
Yeah,
Are you,
exactly.
building houses, working for the government? Like, what are you doing?
But when you say root beer, it's like, okay, that was the old version. Here's a new one. Here's a new version.
Exactly, exactly.
So, and I will say though, when you talk about like your 9 to 5 for a split second, you're like, okay, yeah, I have my 9 to 5. But when we talk about this stuff and like helping other men, and especially with a lot of insecurities, a lot of shame, a lot of things that I think we're now just talking about within probably the last couple of years, where it's just like, if you're a guy, you just have to grit through life, you just have to suffer, and you can't really be emotional, you can't really have your emotions. So a lot of guys are like, oh, if I can't express myself, I can't do this. Then it's just like, I guess I'll just turn it completely off, which people tend to be extremes where they go from one extreme to the other extreme. So it's nice that you're trying to help other guide other men. Like, it's okay to have your feelings. It's okay to talk about what you're going through, and still let's work through what we're going through.
Yeah, I think one thing I've noticed for sure too is as the rise of I'm not a big fan of the phrase, but you always hear toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
And I think that people don't fully understand that because I think when most men hear it, it just sort of makes them shut down. They feel
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, I can't be myself as a man. I can't be more assertive. I can't communicate my feelings. I can't be vulnerable. Like, I think that's what they think of.
Right.
Um,
That's what a lot of the message has been. It's like you can't like work out, and if you show like a lot of muscle or something, you're just showboating kind of thing.
yeah, exactly. So one of the things that I picked it up from No More Mr. Nice Guy was just that you have to be able to be vulnerable and share that stuff and be open, especially, with your partner. But
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed for me that getting better at those kinds of things with my partner has also it's also helped in like my day-to-day interactions with other people too. So that there's carryover.
Right. And that's why when I read Mr. No More Mr. Nice Guy by Robert Glover, I really liked how he really kind of defined it. Because if we talk about toxic masculinity, I always define it as when men one up each other,
Mhm.
when men, and again, kind of going off what you said a lot, is like it's not okay for you to be a feminine kind of guy, right? You always have to be this
Yeah.
tough alpha lone wolf type of mentality, and that's what if that's what how you want to live your life, you live your life how you want to live. But if you want to build connections, relationships, then you have to be a good guy, like be a good man. Ironically, my last name is Goodman,
Perfectly fitting.
perfectly fitting. So it's like you have to be, a good man, right? You have to be someone who's there, approachable, coachable, teachable, building others up. And that's why I love bringing men like you on here because that's what you talk about. You talk about and discuss, rather, how do you do that? Like, how do you see your ex like all the time and you're trying to heal and you're maybe going to therapy, maybe you're working out, talking to a support group, and then you still have to see that and you have to handle it every single time, especially if they throw little darts at you.
Yeah, it was tough at first, man. Because so we had a townhouse, and I stayed in the townhouse, and she moved out. Um, so the way it worked at the beginning was that she would take our daughter during the day while I was at work because she didn't work. She was a stay-at-home mom.
Mm.
And then after work, I would take our daughter. So for the first few months, I really had to see her like first thing in the morning before heading out the door. And then she would be the first person I saw when I got
Oh,
back home. And I mean, it's a lot of dread thinking about I have to like you wake up in the morning and you feel good, but then you're like, oh man, I got to talk to my ex here,
oh,
and
wow.
then take care of that, and then maybe you had an awful day at work, and then the whole ride home, I'm like, oh man, now I got to talk to her. Like I don't want to talk to her. I just want to be left alone. So I mean, it was super hard, and then eventually after a while, it became less frequent as we worked around the custody schedules and things like that. But I learned a valuable lesson that it's not always about me, for lack of a better phrase. Just that at the end of the day, like I said at the beginning, just working to make sure my daughter was okay. So that meant
Mhm.
that I had to keep it together in front of them. If I had an issue with my ex, we could talk about it on the side, but never in front of the kid. And just going with a mindset that, I have to do this for my daughter. I'm her dad. I have to be a great dad. I have to be a good dad. Like that would help me put a lot of the nonsense aside and just sort of forget about it. And, my ex would still, push buttons here and there, but it was a lot easier to deal with when I realized that I wasn't doing it for me. I was doing it for our daughter.
Yeah, it takes a lot of courage for a guy to say that, really. Because, as people, we can be very self focused. Like, you're the problem. You're the reason I'm this, and you're the reason why I did X, Y, and Z. And it really takes a man like you to be very mature to go from an immaturity response to like blaming everybody else to a mature response of what was my contribution in that? Again, not denying that things haven't happened because everyone has to take responsibility and accountability, the R and A that no one really likes. Hopefully that's making a comeback that people do because it does help us. But learning how not to be selfish, learning how not to be immature. I think that takes you have to take a really hard look at yourself, and I always reference Robert Glover, not always, but in this case, quite a bit. I remember when he was in a restaurant with his friends, and they're all like, "Hey, nothing is good in life," and he goes, "Do you even know the waitress's name?" Like, what was her name? Goes, and the waitress was come out, like, "Hey, you guys don't pay attention. You guys don't pay attention to our name. You don't pay attention to when we do our nails or how we spend so much time getting the outfit just right, the makeup just right, the hair just right, the shoes." And so it's like really teaching a lot of men, like, you gotta pay attention to the name, first of all,
Mhm.
eyes, hair, nails, and shoes.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point. He is on the money with that for sure.
Well, I mean, he a counselor? I'm trying to remember. I think he
Yeah, I think he was. I know he does other courses and things too online, but I think he was. I don't think he's still a practicing therapist, but he was. I
no.
think when he
Right.
released the book, I believe he was still practicing.
So, I mean, he's obviously seen, like, a lot of couples and a lot of relationships, and that's just something that people always study. I mean, everything is a science, and takes a science to knowing yourself, what's around you, kinda like Sun Tzu in The Art of War. I don't know if you ever read that book.
Yeah, it's a great
Okay.
one.
So that's, again, knowing who you are, knowing your enemy, knowing what resources you have, what's in your environment. It's all being about being mindful, being aware, not being distracted by what should or could be, but accepting the moment as reality.
Yeah, that worrying about the shoulds and the coulds in the woods will drive you crazy because maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't, but you don't want to spend all your time worrying about something that's not going to happen. So I know it's much easier said than done, but to definitely put yourself in the present, think like, okay, this is what's really going on. And that was, kind of how it was with my divorce, actually, was just, getting to the point of not pointing fingers anymore and being like, look, this is what the truth is. The truth is this didn't work. I played a part and I've got a choice here. I can either continue pointing fingers and be miserable for the rest of my life, or I can just start over, make a change, and, anything else is still possible, but I can't keep doing what I'm doing because clearly it hadn't worked after getting a divorce. So it was time to change.
Yeah, and it's never too late to change, no matter how old you are. Age is just, in that case, just a number, truly.
Yeah,
Um,
100%. Yeah, never too late, never too old.
and so, you taking on new clients right now, by
Oh
chance?
yeah, always. If
Always.
any,
Oh, I like that. Gotta have a little bit more confidence, man. Always.
always.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody listening that, is struggling with their divorce or they're separated and trying to figure things out, like I said, reach out pretty much any platform, Single Dad Reboot. I'd be happy to talk, help you figure things out for sure. Because I know, I'd say after it was all said and done between 2009, I didn't really start feeling normal to like maybe 2018.
Oh,
And
wow.
I think a lot of that was because I did do a lot of self isolation.
Okay.
I did have the single parent group for a little while that did help, but a lot of it I just tried to figure out on my own. So I think if you can find somebody to help you, it'll, you know, make it easier. And I guess I don't want to say speedier to get through because everybody's different and every
Right.
situation's different, but it it's a lot easier when you know what to expect and what's coming your way and what the potential, options are for moving around it.
And that's the thing with men. We tend to isolate. Like, if
Yeah.
we're going through something hard, we feel like we have to take care of this, we have to do this, and we carry the whole weight of the world on our shoulders. When really that just makes people feel worse and more disconnected. And when we're disconnected, that's where a whole load of problems can actually surface from.
Yeah, and I think especially, going through separation and divorce, you just don't feel up to dealing with people because you don't want to have to explain what you're going through. You don't want to tell people how you're doing because you're not doing good. So
Right.
nobody wants to go out and be like, I'm doing awful. I'm not doing good. This sucks. So
Well,
it's
and we all
one
sum
of the
that up
reasons.
in one word: fine.
Yeah, exactly. I'm fine. And everybody knows you're not.
Right.
And majority of the people that ask don't even really want to hear the full story because they don't, want you bleeding that onto them, strangely enough. But yeah, it's something that you really shouldn't try and face it alone. It's just going to make things worse. So even if it's a support group or therapy,
Hmm.
friends, family, just find somebody to talk to.
Yeah. And if you want to be brave and courageous, call someone on their BS. If they use the word fine, like, all right, really fine? Or you BSing me?
Yeah, exactly. I think good conversations are when you actually, are able to say, like, I know you said you're doing fine, but like, how are you really doing? Like, how's life? What are you
Yes.
struggling with? What's going good? What's going bad? I think you want to get out of the whole, like, oh yeah, I'm fine. Or are you good? Yeah. Like, you want to ask more open-ended questions to try and get things out of people.
Yeah, it's almost like you have to really learn to say yes again. Because I know, and I struggle with this sometimes, honestly, personally, is like it's like yeah versus yes and no.
Yeah. I'm the same. Yeah, there you go. I just said yeah. Same exact
Live
place.
on the podcast, we got a two yes versus saying yes. And that's something we all have to learn how to do. It's just say yes is yes, no is no. Try not to use the word fine. You can say, like, I'm doing okay. I'm not doing great, but things are going to get better. I'm doing good. I'm kind of happy right now. Really take time to describe what you're going through. And that may take some time. And you might even say, I don't honestly know how I'm feeling right now because there's a lot of things going on in my brain.
Yeah. I think a lot of people would understand that too, but
Yeah.
like you said, being open and being vulnerable actually helps you connect with other people.
Yes.
So it's better to do that than to just hold it all in. Like never hold it all in. You need to figure out a way to let it out constructively.
100% agree. And that's just one of the most powerful things that we could really do is really watch how we say and how we describe things. And that might take some journaling, looking at some prompts, I know a lot of those journal books that already have it filled out for you because a lot of times
Yeah.
people struggle with that. I've even started recommending actually do a video journal. A lot of people don't
Yeah.
write to for yourself.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And I think, and honestly, I would even recommend if you're going to do a video journal, you might as well share it
Oh, that's a
some
whole
way.
nother brain for stuff right
That's
there. You just calling people out right now. Hey,
yeah,
if you're gonna record it, might as well post it.
yeah. I mean, you never know who else is suffering from the same thing. And the way the world is nowadays, like we're all pretty much connected 24/7, and you really have no idea who's going to see it. So
Yeah.
if your journey is able to help someone else, and I would say absolutely, definitely share it. And I know it can be nerve-wracking at first, or maybe you don't want people to know about it, but you can always go back when you're feeling better and release it and say, hey, this is how I overcame divorce. This is what I did. And then you've got
Right.
videos from every day or every week about what you were struggling with and what you got better at.
That's very true because you can do that. You just have to make a wide decision if you want to put yourself out on the internet. It's not always easy, especially when people with, a let's say like anonymous kind of person having like their profile, something else, and because that we always have to look at both sides. Some people can be very supportive. Some people are just gonna say, "Suck it up, Buttercup," something like that. So you do have to prepare yourself for comments, and that's why sometimes you disable a comment too.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's one of the things that's great about social media is there's a block button. So whoever's giving you grief, block them. That's it. You don't have to deal with it. You don't
There you
have to
go.
respond to nonsense comments or people being rude. Just block them.
And that's why in the Men's Lifeline Academy, we're scholars of life. And in this support group and in this world of learning, go follow Craig.
I
Go
agree.
what you're doing right now after you watch this video, go check out Craig. And if you're a single dad needing a reboot in your life, this is the man to look for. This man will help you through it because he actually has the experience. He knows what it's like, the hurt and the pain, and how it took him a long time to recover from it. So that's also very wise because it shows that the journey may not be healed in a day, a month, or a year. It just begins with one step forward. Knowing that you can be healed and work through it, that anything is possible. So go follow Craig. And Craig, as we wrap up, what's a word of advice you'd like to give someone today?
I would say that no matter how dark and bleak things might seem, they're going to get better. Nobody knows how or when, but you still have to get up every morning and go to work, take a step forward. So just focus on doing that. Don't try and rush to the end and be like, okay, I want to be over this. I want to be healed. I want to be the best version of myself. Like that takes work. It took you however long you've been alive to get to where you are. So it's going to take time to change. So just don't rush through things, feel what you need to feel, process everything, and then when the clouds start to clear, take a deeper look and be introspective about yourself and say, what did I do wrong here? What could I have changed, instead of looking in the other direction about, oh well, they did this, they did that. It's like, what did you do? What did you not do? I think those are the two biggest pieces I have. But just the main one, everything's going to be okay. Just know that.
Well, Craig, I want to thank you so much again for being number 50, being number 50, and
I'm
especially those
honored.
words of wisdom of being true to yourself, knowing that it may not, if it's going to take you some time to look within, it's going to take you some time, and that's okay. Like you said, you didn't get to 0 to 100 in just a few seconds. It took a lot of time, took a lot of days, and let's just focus on that. And if you're a man and you need some help and guidance, we have the Men's Lifeline Academy Discord group that has lessons, engagements. We're very active. And I really want everyone to go support Craig. Go check out his Spotify. Everything's gonna be in the description below. His X account, Twitter, however you want to call it these days. And then let's support the Men's Lifeline Academy. If you got value of this video, then make sure you hit that subscribe button. You share it. You post a little comment. What did you learn today? So as we do this call to action, let's go for a call of action of not going through life alone. So if you're ready not to go through life alone, whether you reach out to Craig, myself for coaching, or rather you just support the channels, what is one thing you can do today to not isolate yourself? So let us know in the comments below, what is one thing you're going to do? Because on this channel, we're men of action. We take action. We take control of our lives. We know that the possible is impossible, and you can do this too. So go out there. Have a blessed day. Craig, thank you so much.
I'm honored for being number 50. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.